Good evening. Hi, how are you all? Tonight we're going to be talking about burns and scalding. This was inspired slightly by a post that I had, or a message I had earlier on in the week, about someone that had burnt themselves just in the kitchen. I think it was with a frying pan. So yeah, it's quite commonplace to burn or scald yourself in and around the home. So thought it'd be best to actually talk about that. And also, we've got beautiful weather at the moment. The sun is shining, it's nice and hot, and unfortunately there's going to be people that get sunburned. So again, it's still a type of burn, and actually it can be a severe burn as well. And we're going to talk about severities of burns and terminologies as we go through. So I'm just going to say hi Alex, you alright? And just wait for a few more to come on, and then we'll get started. I'll try not to keep you as long as I did the last time, so hopefully we can keep this down to about 10 minutes as well. But if you have any questions, then obviously please ask away, and I'll try and get them at the end or as we go through. And obviously if you have any questions in the future, you don't want to put it in the comments, then message me. That's absolutely fine. Okay, I'm just going to take some water, so I'm going to cough. All right. Okay, let's get started then. Quick question: who's been burnt before? Whether that's sunburn or scalded or picked up a hot pan, you know, I'm sure we've all been through it. So yeah, pop your comments below there. I remember I burnt my back, I think, as a child. I jumped up on the side where I shouldn't have been, and sat back onto an iron. So yes, so I had a nice iron mark on my back for a while. Alex, I don't know if you remember that. You're probably too small, but my mum will definitely remember that. I was always doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Probably still am, but never mind. Okay, right then. Burns and scald. Right, it's really important to treat it. So immediate action is required when it comes to dealing with burns or scald, especially severe burns. The problem with severe burns is the fluid, sort of like you're going to get a blister, the fluid goes to the skin, you're losing fluid within the body, you can get shock. So again, it's really important that we actually deal with that injury and deal with shock as well, which we covered in a couple of weeks back, I think, in a Facebook Live. All right. So the longer we leave it untreated, the longer it's going to take to heal. So it's really important that we have immediate action as well. Now, types of burns we can get. So we've got thermal burns. They're burns that that occur when you pick up something hot. You've got chemical burns. Unfortunately, you know, especially in the workplace, we've got chemicals, but we've also got bleach and things that are around the home as well, so things that can burn us. Also, with chemical burns, we've had spates of people throwing acid into people's faces and things like that out on the street. Absolutely hideous, you know. So if you've seen that, you know, it's quite important we know how to deal with that. Electrical burns, friction burns, radiation. So that's the sunburn. You know, especially out and about at the moment. So they're the kind of burns that we can actually get. And also cold burns. So frostbite and things like that. It's still a burn. It's still damaging your skin. So again, we need to deal with that. We'll deal with that slightly different to how we deal with just a standard burn. Hi Georgie. Alex, you've burnt your hand with boiling water. Yeah, and they really hurt. Burns really, really hurt. Okay. Now, another burn, obviously, we talk about thermal burns, but if we're involved in a fire, not just the burning of the skin, but also smoke as it's inhaled. So there could be internal damage as well. So again, that is definitely a consideration when it comes to dealing with burns associated with fire. All right. Now, the priority with a burn is to cool it. All right, we need to cool it. The guidelines have literally just changed this year from 10 minutes to 20 minutes. And that's any kind of burn, really. So if you've tipped some boiling water over your hand, or you've picked up a hot saucepan, cooling it for 10 minutes, all right? but the guidelines have changed now to 20 minutes. All right, so no less than 10 minutes, but up to about 20 minutes to cool the burn, or the pain starts to lessen. Remember, the longer we can cool that burn, it's stopping the burn going through. All right, because the skin, your skin's got you've got the dermis, which is the top part of your skin, then you've got the epidermis, which is the fat layers, and obviously fat, once that gets heated up, it likes to continue to burn. So we need to cool that down for 20 minutes there. All right, so just running it under cool water is absolutely fine, or if you haven't got that, putting them in I don't know, in a bucket of water, anything just to get that temperature down on the skin there. If it's quite a severe burn, then remember shock. Make sure we lie the casualty down if we can, elevate the legs, again that will lessen the effect of shock, but remember to cool the burn. Keep the burn as clean as possible, so try not to touch the area too much. Ideally, if you are dealing with someone that's got a burn, then you want to put some gloves on to prevent infection. And if the burn is severe, okay, and we'll talk about severity of burns in a minute, then again you might need to call the emergency services, and especially if that person's going into shock as well. When the area has been cooled, so you've cooled the burn for 20 minutes, then you could dress the burn. So if you've got a non-fluffy dressing, so most dressings are non-fluffy from first aid kits, you can actually put that over the wound. Non-fluffy because we don't want things actually getting into the burn, because if they do have to go off to hospital or have it checked out, then they'll have to take all of that out. So again, non-fluffy dressing over the top. Now if you haven't got a non-fluffy dressing, I'm sure we all have something like this. Cling film. Yeah, use cling film, all right? So cool the burn, and then all you need to do is lay the cling film over the wound. Don't wrap it around, because what's going to happen with that wound or that burn, it'll start to swell, potentially that area. So if we've got anything that's going to restrict that area, you might want to take it off. So rings, watches, anything that could cause a constriction, take it off. And the same as with the cling film, just lay it over the top. All you're just doing is protecting it from infection. You might find other bits and pieces that you have lying around the house. I have one of these. It's basically a burn dressing. So again, it's a sterile burn dressing. It's a cooling gel. You open it up and then you just lay it over the wound. I wouldn't use this instead of cooling it. Cooling, running under the water, is your priority. This could be something as an additional, and also just to keep that cooling process and also keep any bugs out of that wound. And there's some other ones here. I'm not going to use this one because I've just found out it goes out of date in 2015. That's going in the bin. All right. And again, something like this one actually smells really nice, and that can go over the wound. But as I said, it won't substitute that cooling process. All right. So what we mustn't do with burns is remove anything sticking to that burn. So if we've got a thermal burn, so fire from a barbecue, or the clothes have melted to the skin, which can happen, cut around the area, but don't take anything out of the wound itself. If there's any blisters, don't burst them. The blisters are there for a very good reason. They're cooling, but also they're putting a protective layer over that wound. Don't put any lotions or cream on. I don't know if any of you remember the old wives' tale of putting butter onto the wound. Yeah, don't do it, because it's nice cooking oil, that, isn't it? So don't do that. Don't put anything on it. Don't put adhesive dressings on, obviously. Anything, if there's burns around the face, and obviously make sure those dressings aren't going to obstruct the airway. And don't allow the casualty to eat or drink, especially if it's a severe burn, because again, shock, it might induce vomiting, or they might have to go to hospital and have surgical care. So again, maybe not a good idea giving them anything to eat or drink. But go back to the shock and the first aid for shock, and deal with it that way. All right. Now, just have a quick look for questions. Hi, Katie. Hi, Sue. Right. Okay, right. There are different types of degrees of burn. We used to talk about 1st degree, 2nd degree and 3rd degree burns. Now that's now being replaced by superficial, partial thickness, and then you've got full thickness burns. All right. So with your superficial burn, we're talking about a bit of sunburn. So on the skin, so on your epidermis, you've got a bit of sunburn. It's sore. It can be really, really sore. Okay, but it hasn't really gone through any of the layers. All right. So again, cooling of that area and looking after that area as well. Now, a partial thickness is now a blistered area, so you can see a blister forming in that area. So what's happened is the burn's gone through the dermis and the epidermis. It can be very, very painful. Again, if it's got blisters, don't burst them, but again, cooling of that area is absolutely key. Full thickness, that is when it's going through the dermis, the epidermis, and going down through into fat layers. It might hit blood vessels and also nerve endings, but actually this full thickness might not actually give much pain in the localized area. You might find some it looks waxy around the area, or it's dark as it's been charred. Okay, so again, that's full thickness, and that is a severe burn. Obviously that definitely needs medical attention on that one. Okay, so treating the burns, as I said, cooling them. All right, keep cooling them for at least 20 minutes. If it is a chemical burn, then definitely 20 minutes, and flushing the chemical away from that person's, so if you've got chemical in the face here, then make sure it goes away from the face. We don't want it to sort of like drip down any other part of the body, because it could cause more burning. And as a first aider, just look after yourself as well. So if there's chemicals, then obviously just keep that chemical away from yourself as well. Okay. We do talk about percentage of burn. So 1% burn is basically the palm of your hand. Okay, so for me that is a 1% burn. So if you've got a sunburn, let's say up here it's 1%, yeah, it's pretty horrible. It's going to sting, it's going to hurt, but you might not need medical attention for that. But if you've got a partial thickness, so you've got a blistering area around there, then yeah, it's probably wise to seek medical attention. But remember, keeping cooling on there as long as you can. And again, full thickness, that goes without saying, make sure you get medical attention. Now, for children, especially children under 5, any burn could result in the child going into shock quite quickly. So again, I would advise any type of burn on a young child, so under 5, definitely seek medical attention. I cover a lot of this in my online infant and child first aid course for parents, and I'll drop the link in there, and I do cover burns in depth, and so like when to actually take them to hospital and things like that. So I'll cover a bit more in there. Now, has anyone got any questions? I feel like I've rattled through that this evening. I've got to see who's there. Hi Jodie. Now, does everyone carry cling film? I don't carry it with me, but it's such a good thing for burns. But also sort of like bags like this as well, so your freezer bags and things like that. Again, they can go over the wounds instead of cling film if you haven't got those. Okay, I hope I have covered everything, but if you've got any questions, then drop them in the comments below, and I can always get back to you. Or if you don't want sort of like anyone to read those, then stick them in Messenger, and we can answer them then. Okay, well, I will say good night, and I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.